This is it. They did it. Episode 5 of The Last of Us was just right. It has everything. I am blown away by this episode. I know the exact moment that I realized that they were doing it, and that's when those infected exploded out of the ground. I was like, here we go. They didn't lose any of the brilliant writing of episode 3. Oh my God, we have so much to discuss. It's amazing. But yes, I want to start with the third act because that's what you're going to want to talk about right away. And that's what's going to really, I think, impress people. Because we already knew this show was well written and very intelligent from episode 3. But now they finally added the one element they were missing. And that's the wowza factor. Oh, it was so good. When that crashed truck sunk into the ground because more sinkholes, surprise, or is it? They did a great job of teasing that with finding one in the city. Right before the ground exploded with infected, right? So as the truck suddenly and violently dropped below the surface and everyone was like, what's happening? I gasped out loud watching my screener because I realized with only seconds to spare, just as everyone did, what was happening. And then they came out of the ground and it was even cooler than I thought it was going to look. And that's also kudos to the show for pulling off the scene so spectacularly. From organically putting Joel in a sniper position. Oh, it was amazing. He wasn't like, I better get to higher ground. He happened to find himself there with a sniper gun, a sniper rifle. That was phenomenal. And an amazing combo of extras and special effects makeup and the VFX team to truly create a swarm of infected that looked real. It looked real. A lot of times these days you can easily spot CGI doubles. And I was like, that looks real. It was amazing. And we finally got a bloater. For those of you not in the know, I found out it is a stage 4 infection from the game. They take years to develop. Remember, Joel said an infected person could live for 20 years, and they're quite rare. So it's an infected elder. And they're also the strongest, as we found out. Rip that guy's head clean off. Sure, he was the one component that looked a little CGI. I gotta say, when he was running, he looked a little, Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas, right? His movements weren't totally smooth, but it didn't matter. It was very cool. I was like, this is fantastic. But nothing could compare to the poetic brilliance of how Kathleen was killed, aka The Last of Us' Karen. All right, so let's discuss that. We learned a lot about Kathleen this episode, and I agree. I don't think she's very well set up. But and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this breakdown. But what I want to talk about right now is how she goes out, because it was freaking brilliant. All right, so make no mistake, the writers wanted us to hate Kathleen, and hate her we did. During the opening scene this week, I was very interactive with this episode. So during the opening scene, I muttered, after she gave the kill order for those people, I muttered to myself, someone's got to kill Kathleen. I was like, yeah, that's on our hit list. And oh, how my blood curdled when it looked like she'd won. I felt awful about that. I was so upset. And then her appalling speech about how children die every day, so saving Sam's life wasn't worth losing her adult brother. I mean, it was shocking to hear her say that. I mean, you'd think we'd be numb to it by now with our political situation, but still, to hear someone say something just so evil and to mean it, it was just incredible to see. And perhaps because it does speak to a little bit what's going on in current events right now. You just couldn't believe what you were witnessing. I mean, I had problems with how Henry did what he did. I don't like the way he went about it, and I'll talk to you about that as well. I felt he didn't try enough other things first. But I totally got his motivation. In fact, the show made me feel his motivation. Because during the beginning of this week's episode, when he and Sam were going around, thanks to an incredible both of them were great, but Keivonn Woodard is Sam. What an incredible child actor. I had even thought to myself, no, please don't kill this child. Not this child. He's so pure and innocent and good. Is there no good left in the world? I was just, you've heard that sentiment before, so intellectually we're familiar with it. But I don't know if like in a piece of entertainment, I've ever felt it. I think this is a crazy comparison, but I think the only other property that has made me so emotionally connect to it is The Passion of the Christ, where you understood all the horrible and evilness that Jesus Christ took on for us, for humanity. And I was like, I remember crying through tears watching that movie when it came out in the theater, being like, just leave him alone. And I felt that way about Sam. I was like, he is such a beautiful soul. Not him, please, not him. And then there's Kathleen with her evil speech about kids. And sure enough, who shows up minutes later? An infected, I want to say toddler. I'm not too good at guessing kids' age, but I think that was a toddler. But it was effective. This was a great idea. I didn't even make the connection right away that this toddler had a date with Kathleen. I was like, oh, a date with destiny. This is going to be great. I, like Ellie, was just shocked. I was like, to see something so innocent be infected, I was like, what the heck is that? And it was so well realized. A real child dancer, Amy Donald, did the physical performance a lot of the time for Megan. So I don't know if it's, after seeing that, I mean, who knows what some performers at any age might be capable of. So that could be an actual child, it could be a CGI creation, or maybe a mix of both. I do feel at sometimes her I think it was a little girl, her movements were sped up, but it was just incredible. It was mesmerizing. I actually thought it was more compelling than the Bloater, because I felt like I'd kind of seen the Bloater before, like stuff like that. I had never seen anything like this before. It was just so well realized. It just, in horror, it captured my imagination and interest. I was like, that is truly something I have not seen before. Including the way she moved, the way she flipped around. It was just such an amazing idea, and again, so well executed. And when it looked like Kathleen might win yet again, so hell-bent on revenge, even after her pursuit of revenge leads to the death and infection of all the troops who were following her, you think she would have realized, what have I done? But no, she was just that hell-bent on getting her revenge. But then when the infected toddler leaped up on the tombstone behind her to pounce, a smile crept across my lips. Karma. Ah, that was so amazing. And Kathleen was savagely murdered and likely turned by a child who had died. I was like, wow! Again, this show is just so incredibly well constructed. And of course, with all due respect, it does build on the game. But what Craig Mazin has built on the game is truly incredible. He has already won a bunch of awards for Chernobyl, but he's going to have more to put on his shelf. I'm sure of it. The writing on this is like, I wish we saw writing like this in franchise films, because it's just incredible. And to have all the elements of the game that fans want to see, but to still have like the dramatic storytelling and the message is just so good. All right, now if this show can maintain this, now that we found our groove, if we can maintain this for the rest of season 1, it could indeed, I think, maybe reach the heights of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. But I say maybe, I qualify it because I also had an epiphany this week about what The Last of Us is really about. And I'm sure some of you will be like, I always knew. Well, it took me this time to get here. And because I think I try to be a very optimistic, positive, forward-thinking person, I don't like this epiphany. But I'd still respect it, and I finally was like, okay, I do see what you're doing. And I've never seen science fiction, certainly in a mainstream capacity, do this before, so let's talk about it, and it's fucking dark. So we've now seen 2 pairs of people where one kills themselves rather than have to go on without the other. Poor Tess, truly the friend zone of The Last of Us. I'm like, well, Joel kept going. It's so bad, it's so embarrassing. And when Sam asks Ellie what she's scared of, first she gives a joke answer, but then she lets her guard down once more, and she admits she's scared of ending up alone. Not just because she's in the apocalypse, but she seems to be the only one who's immune. So that would mean she actually could be the last person left alive at some point. And that's when it hit me. Putting all that stuff together, I was like, this isn't just a show about the apocalypse. This is truly a show about The Last of Us. And I'm sure the comments below, some people will be like, I knew that the whole time, Grace. Well, this is a hard thing to accept and a hard thing to watch. That this is The Last of Us. This is the end. Humanity is circling the drain, and these are the last people left to witness it, the death throes. I didn't watch a lot of The Walking Dead, but I don't even think The Walking Dead was that bleak. This is it. This is the moment in Toy Story when they think they're going into the furnace. And as you know, I didn't like that either. So yes, unlike countless sci-fi and horror stories that have come before, there is no hope. You always feel you're going to be the final girl, right? Final girl or boy. You're like, we can do it. We can make it. And you're like, I believe there's actually, at this point, no making it. There's no hope. There's no cavalry. This isn't a Twilight Zone episodes where aliens are going to come down and be the cavalry and help us out. I'd be like, I'll take that at this point. I don't know if it's an American way of thinking or what, but I'm like, this is what, it's very crazy to me. It's like, I don't even think there's probably a miracle cure to be made, right? This is just it. This is it. And so, and also because when the episode started, because I knew Henry and Sam were going to die from my research on the game, as we spent so much time with them at the beginning, I became despondent, being like, okay, is this what the show is going to be? Meeting really great charismatic characters and getting attached to them only to have to watch them die in front of you? Isn't that what villains always promise the hero, that they're going to, what they're going to do to them to get back at them? And that's the show, right? I mean, how is that entertainment? I think it's crazy. I also thought to myself while I was watching this, and some of you like that kind of stuff. That's fine, but I do question the size of the audience who wants to be depressed that much every week. I like genre stuff, but I think there's people who don't particularly care about genre stuff who are like, am I really going to do this to myself every week? And this didn't really happen, by the way. There wasn't an actual fungal apocalypse, and we need to honor the victims by showing their sacrifices. This is fiction. So can't we have a few wins here? This is fiction. Why can't there be I guess some of you would argue that someday there will be an end, and this will be what it's like, but I choose to believe that we will always, in the nick of time, pull ourselves out of the fire. I mean, we've been doing it for hundreds of years already, and we've had some close calls, man. We've had some close calls. So this is bleak. But when the episode ended, also, as Joel and Ellie stood on Henry and Sam's graves, I realized that the show, even though I did not care for this feeling, was making me understand how Joel and particularly Ellie feel, because she is the one learning all this like we are. So again, I don't like this feeling. I don't care for it. I don't even necessarily agree with it. I don't know why anybody would imagine this. But I'm impressed with the show for managing to take me on that true apocalyptic emotional journey. And I think it's funny that I drew the comparison to the Passion of the Christ. And maybe it's the emotional aspect of that is what's so interesting to people. Like, do you feel like this is like the rapture, maybe? I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if there's a religious component to this to some degree, to this discussion. More levels. But anyway, again, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people who weren't like in this space would be like, well, let's watch this every week. So I think that's the one thing that could keep it from getting to Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon levels, right? I mean, they're always doing last minute saves on that show, and it's great. I mean, sure, occasionally a character bites the dust, but you don't relate to that character. Maybe some of you do, but I relate to the characters that live to fight another day. Now, not to say this won't be a very successful show, very successful, but I do feel that kind of despair and hopelessness might keep it from reaching Game of Thrones levels. All right, go ahead, talk amongst yourselves down below what kind of emotions you're okay with. So let's focus now, though, on some of the other incredible story points this week. Again, this is a masterclass on how to tell a story. Again, not just telling a story, an engaging story, but this character development, the things that are being said, the way things are set up. You rarely see this. All right, so Ellie, you could teach a screenwriting class on this episode. I hope some of you are learning screenwriting from The Last of Us. It would be a good class to take. So it's like when my film school professors would just show us clips and say, what do you learn from this? And we had to figure it out. I have that same feeling watching this show, which is so cool. So Ellie grew up this episode, illustrated by her literally sitting at the kids' table. Isn't that so great that they did that? That's why they had to find that hideout with the children's area. I don't believe that's from the game. So she was sitting at the kids' table, but then she has to realize she's not a kid. Someone relied on her, which Henry and Joel discussed the night before. All that stuff goes down at the very end of the episode of being the definition of what being an adult is, that someone relies on you. And Ellie, Sam was relying on her, and she let him down. I mean, that's incredible. Like in the game, Sam gets infected. He does get infected in the game, but in the game, nobody knows. He doesn't tell anybody, and so he only turns the next, a couple hours later. So the way they did it here, it was far more dramatic and heartbreaking, and incredible character development, particularly for Ellie. Ellie should have apologized. She messed up so bad, but just like so often in real life, she can't take it back. All she can do is hope to learn from it. And she's going to have to carry this for the rest of her life. And I think I can see that already, which is a real credit to Bella Ramsey's acting. Sam tells her he's been infected, and she feels maybe she can heal him by smearing some of her blood on him because she's immune. I mean, I think you would need to do a transfusion. That's not how that stuff works. It's a very childlike idea of how she could potentially save him, which I also think is an interesting choice, because she is in that weird space of being between a child and an adult. And I don't know if you saw that thing about Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriends compared to The Last of Us, but that's interesting in that light. But anyway, And Sam, knowing he's going to turn, like, I thought it was so incredible when he asks Ellie, when you turn into a monster, are you still you inside? I mean, again, incredible acting from Woodard as a child actor especially, to tackle the idea of impending death and to know that it's coming. And I felt that radiating off of him in waves. It was incredible. That was a very strong performance. He asks Ellie to stay with him so he doesn't have to be alone during his last hours of humanity. And she promises him that she will, and then she falls asleep. I almost wish we'd seen that moment when he turned. Just to think about it. And I'm sure Ellie thinks about it all the time. So he turned alone. He should have gone and woken up his brother. I so wish that he had. But he turned alone. And then to make matters worse, so he turns into a monster. And Joel and Henry are so shocked to see him rabid that in the confusion and in Joel wanting to take care of it, Henry ends up killing his own brother so that no one else has to do it. Because he doesn't want anything to happen to Ellie, because he doesn't know she's immune. Joel should have been like, let him go to town on her. I guess maybe he would have killed her. But, and the shock of that makes Henry kill himself. And I think it's not just the guilt of killing Sam, but that turning on Michael, a man that he said he really admired, and turning him over to Fedra for the leukemia drugs, something he was clearly still wrestling with and living with that guilt as well, that ended up being for nothing. So I think that's why he did that. And I think that it was because it all happened so quickly. So if Ellie had told Henry that Sam was infected, Henry could have had time to emotionally prepare himself for what he had to do, or make peace with asking Joel to do it for him. I think it was just the surprise in the moment that made him do that. And he could have said goodbye to Sam. He could have been there when Sam turned. Henry would not have fallen asleep. And Ellie robbed him of that. She robbed Sam of that. And I think she's partially responsible for Henry's death. And you know what? I think she knows that. And that's incredible. That's where the show is brilliant. People do mess up, especially a child forced into an adult situation who was an orphan, who never had really anyone raise her. And she made a bad decision. And she's going to have to live with that for the rest of her life. And that's very sophisticated commentary. And I just think that's incredible. Just an incredible. It's the writing and the acting in particular. Now let's talk about Kansas City. What a horrible place. I was just so disgusted with Kansas City. At first, I was appalled with Kathleen. Craig Mazin and the ends, in the behind the scenes thing for the last episode said that he wanted to show that just like in real life, sometimes the liberators are even worse than the oppressors that they overthrow. But I mean, what was going on with Fedra in Kansas City? They were no picnic in Boston, but they weren't doing the evil stuff that was alluded to in Kansas City. I was like, whoa, why don't you guys just leave this city? And while I thought Perry's comments were interesting, that Michael was inspiring, but Kathleen was the one who actually got stuff done, I never saw her actually get anything done. In fact, Melanie Lynskey, who I usually adore, some of you only know her from 2.5 Men. I saw that in some of the comments for last week, and I was like, that would be weird if you have not witnessed any of her other strong dramatic work. She is on a show called Yellow Jackets, which is a little similar to this, and she is phenomenal there. But she's not good on this show. I will agree with you on that. She never sold me as Kathleen as a leader, or even a leader or a competent leader. They're like, wow, Kathleen gets stuff done. And I'd be like, I'd like to see that, because I don't believe it. And as she continued to obsess, because especially this thing about, it's not like, I didn't feel like this Henry thing was like her one blind spot. Like this was her, Moby Dick. Right? Ahab and the whale. I felt like this defined her as a character, at least to us, because we never saw her any other time. So I wasn't like, wow, Kathleen's making really bad decisions, which is weird for her. I was like, I've only seen Kathleen make bad decisions. Stop following her. So as she continued to obsess over capturing and killing Henry, I was like, what could you have possibly done, lady, that you can't let it go? And then we found out. And to Craig Mazin's credit, he actually came up with something that I was like, oh, wow, that is awful. So Henry needed leukemia drugs for Sam. And there are a lot of parallels with Bill and Frank, with Henry and Sam, both getting sick from something that wasn't infection. It wasn't the infection. It was a real world illness from before. I think, and also the murder-suicide situation going on there. I mean, obviously they were a little different, but there are enough similarities that I feel they kind of they oddly mirror each other. So, I mean, I guess we'll just have to say that was an intentional choice. Because, I do really love this episode, and it did get me to some very important points emotionally and intellectually. So anyway, Henry turned in the leader of the resistance, who he admired. I don't know why he didn't just say to Fedra, he's not accomplishing anything, guys. Just give me the leukemia drugs. So anyway, I'd be like, come on, there's got to be something else you guys want. But he admired Kathleen's brother as a great man, but he turned him in so he could get the medicine from Fedra. And I was like, based on your story, Henry, this feels like what should have been a last resort was a first resort. I didn't hear any story about you getting you're with a band of rebels, for Pete's sake. I didn't hear anything about you trying to bribe someone in Fedra to smuggle out the medicine. Get someone low down, bribe them. It's a tale as old as time. Steal the drugs, stage a raid. I don't know why you went straight to being like, here's our leader, go ahead and kill him. I mean, he traded Michael's life for Sam's in brutal fashion. And even though it was for his brother, which I totally get, I think the way that Craig Mazin set it up, it was a Judas move, I'm sorry to say. And so, but that's really fascinating. It's weird. Like, there are no clear-cut heroes and villains on this show, except for Joel. I know a lot of you are like, but yeah, Grace, Joel's bad. And I'm like, I have yet to see it. He is clearly the most heroic person we've seen yet. So anyway, when I heard what Henry did, I was like, yeah, I'm out. This whole place is horrible. Nobody's a winner. No, I can't, it's impossible for me to align with anybody. And Henry said, well, you don't have to feel a righteousness because I know the way out. I have the way out. And I was like Joel, I was like, all right, let's do this. So it was set up very much like a video game mission, right? Oh, we have to go here to here to here and collect these things. But they made it very short. There were like 2 or 3 tunnels they had to go through. And they were clear. There wasn't anything down there. Luckily, the show made up for it with that incredible showdown at the end in the supposedly abandoned suburban neighborhood. I guess no one in that group ever heard of the Jinx, because they were practically skipping and singing down the middle of that road. I was like, you guys, you're right out in the open. What are you doing? I would think that I would hug the shadows, although maybe I'd be concerned about an infected person jumping out and biting me, right? Maybe when you're out in the middle of the road, you can, see all around you better, I guess. I don't know why nobody made more of an effort to cover themselves if they were worried about being bitten. I'd be wearing like head to toe leather. I'd be like, let's do this. Or I'd tin can myself up. They had a lot of time. They could have built some armor. I would have definitely tried to do something along those lines. And then I guess I could walk down in the middle of the road, but I certainly wouldn't be talking loudly. Anyway, I would have been really, really careful until I was over that final bridge, which was an incredible shot, by the way. It almost looked like a illustration from Disney's Peter Pan or Cinderella with the moonlight. Like Mary Blair drew that VFX shot with the moonlight glistening off of it. I was like, safety. But knowing the show, I'm sure it sucks over there too. But at least it was another day over that bridge. And Joel, again, who so many of you keep claiming is a monster, I loved when he begged that sniper with stormtrooper aim not to make him kill him. He was like, please don't make me do it. It was just such a great hero moment. It was so great. Also, I've seen people arguing that Ellie is the actual star of this show, which to me, it reminded me of when the writers of Pirates of the Caribbean insisted that Keira Knightley was the true star of that franchise. Look, that might be what you intended, but it is not what the public decided. Who was hosting SNL last weekend? I do believe it was Pedro Pascal. To be fair, Bella Ramsey is improving exponentially with her work each week, and I think she's really building in terms of charisma. She had some great moments this episode, and she's really growing on me as a character. So her time could very well come. But as for now, this is Pedro Pascal's show. I loved his comment to Henry, by the way, earlier on in the office building when he was like, let's just call it a draw. That made me laugh out loud. It was very well delivered. When Henry really stepped up to try and save Ellie and Sam on that suburban road, I forgave him a little, actually, even though I have been so appalled, by how easily he gave up this man that he really admired and who was fighting this evil. Although it turns out he was leading a bunch of worse people. But anyway, I still kind of forgave Henry. And I think that was interesting to see that illustrate the forgiveness, the ability for compassion and forgiveness that we have as human beings. So I thought that was great. Again, I'm like, I love all these emotions I'm feeling. And so I got to say, when they were in that motel room, I was like, please take them to Wyoming. I was like, please, Craig Mazin, you've made changes to this show, to the game already. Make another one. Please, The Last of Us, Lord, let these boys live. But then I also remembered that they weren't in any of the trailers when they were in the snowy area, so I was like, they're not going to make it. But still, the fact that Craig Mazin was able to cruelly keep that spark of hope alive in me, I'm incorrigible. What can I say? I'm like, they can do it. We can do it. I was like, I really felt like maybe they'd make it. And so it was just particularly cruel when they did not. Lamar Johnson, again, and Keivonn Woodard, incredible acting on both their parts. Two very difficult and complex roles. I also appreciated the change in scenery. We've been having a lot of, woods scenes and all the QZs to me look the same. But I liked going into office buildings, and I liked going into the suburbs, like the established suburbs. I thought that was great. I think it really opened up the world of The Last of Us more and makes it seem all the more real. I like seeing more and more places because it makes you feel like you're in a bigger world. Then finally, comic books. Comics are the cousins of video games. So I don't appreciate the line here saying that they're for kids, and that had the two adults laughing at how Endure and Survive is repetitive, and that Joel said he didn't care for it. I mean, it was very funny the way they delivered those lines, but they were wrong. So let me explain. Also, first I want to say that the comic and the line from the comic, for those of you that don't know, it's actually from the video game. It's from the video game, but in the game, Henry and Sam aren't involved at all with that comic. So, wait till you hear this. So I don't think Endure and Survive is repetitive at all. Survive is the bottom line. Just don't die. But Endure talks about the emotional toll. Sam didn't survive, and Henry, as a result, couldn't endure. That, to me, is what blows my mind. You ready for it? Because it occurred to me, only when I was writing my notes, by the way, that's why Mason used them with that saying. That's why that's the title of this episode. Because what are Henry and Sam? They represent Endure and Survive. Even if it's in a negative fashion, that's what they are. And I guess that's that show in a nutshell. Why can't Endure and Survive be positive? Why can't they like a superhero? And that's, of course, what Sam dresses as. Oh my God, I just got that too. But why couldn't they be people who did endure and survive? It's just really bleak. And I know some of you will be like, but that's the way it would really go down. Would it? Would it? I choose to believe that it would not. All right, so brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I am in awe of, and you can't argue which way it would go for sure, because this is fiction. So it could have gone either way. All right, so anyway, I'm in awe with this show's writing. And again, as I said, it is very rare, ever to see anything written this well, but even rarer, unfortunately, these days. This is brilliant. All right, so, and kudos to the actors for pulling this off, too. The directing's pretty good on the show, but I think I don't think it's amazingly directed, but I think that the writing and the acting are absolutely superb. So I hope we keep going like this. What did you think of The Last of Us Episode 5? Do you agree it was just right? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.